Welcome back, Wolverine's Elevated students. Today we're going to have a mini lesson on the importance of annotating and finding keywords and skimming a text. So that means when reading an article, when reading a book, or when reading anything else you might need to when being a college student, and even more specifically when being a Wolverine's Elevated student. So let's go ahead and get started with keywords. Now, the exact definition of a keyword is a word or concept of great significance. So, in other words, it's basically just a word that will help you better understand a text that you're reading. So, going deeper into that, why are keywords important? Well, really, keywords just help us find content related to what we're looking for. So, an example of this is if you have to answer a question related to a book that you're reading in school, right? We have to read textbooks or articles, anything like that. So, if you're trying to find an answer to a question, you will want to understand what the question is asking you and what content in the book you should be looking for. Now, the reason that the keyword is important in this scenario is because that keyword is really your key to finding your answer. So, in other words, the keyword will be in the question that you're trying to answer, and your answer will be in the book or the text or anything else that you're reading. So, again, a keyword is just a word that you're trying to look for in your book or any other kind of text that holds great significance in helping you find your answer. Which then brings us to our next bullet point. How do I find a keyword? Well, really, there's no exact way to find a keyword. It's more something you have to kind of figure out as you go along. But some things you can look for that are helpful when trying to pinpoint what that keyword is you can look for words that are underlined or bolded or kind of more abnormal words. Specifically with the underline or bolded words, if a word is underlined or bolded, that might be one particular word you want to pay attention to or a keyword when reading through the text that you're looking at. Now, for abnormal words, this is something more that will help you kind of pinpoint where you need to be looking in your text. Now, this isn't always the case with maybe, say, a book, but if it was something more like an article that your professor wanted you to read, looking for more abnormal words will again help you pinpoint where in the article you might want to be reading, which will kind of take us into our next part about skimming. Now, a brief definition of skimming is reading rapidly in order to get a general overview of the material. So, kind of going back to the keywords just for a second and talking about abnormal words, if skimming is to read rapidly in order to get a general overview, finding those abnormal words in the text will help you know where to go to read what you're trying to look for, since skimming is reading rapidly and again, kind of bringing focus to where you need to be looking in your text. And again, with that, this isn't the case for every type of text you will be reading. For example, if you're reading a book, you should be expected to read the full book from cover to cover, or depending on what chapters or sections your professors want you to read, that's something that you will want to read all of the content in it. But keywords are still important here because it will help you answer the question or get a good response to the assignment you're trying to complete. Now, diving more into skimming. So, again, it's reading rapidly where you can get a general overview of what it is that you're reading. And there are some steps you need to take before beginning to skim a text. And that first one is understand what it is you should be looking for. So, you kind of want to ask yourself, what is the assignment asking? Or what question am I trying to find the answer to? If you just go into reading a text and you have no idea what you're supposed to be looking for, it's going to make it really difficult for you to grasp what it is you're reading and your professor's intentions of wanting you to read it. So, again, if you're reading a text for an assignment, you might want to ask yourself, what is the assignment asking me? So, for that, you would want to go to Canvas, look at the assignment, read the instructions, and know what it is that you will be turning in. Or if it was the case that you were reading a book for a class, you would want to ask yourself, what question am I trying to find the answer to? Most likely, when you're reading a book for a class, there will be questions that your professor will want you to answer. And so that's where it's important to read your questions first and really have a good grasp of what it is you are going to be looking for when reading your book. And again, getting that good grasp of what you're looking for will kind of go back to those keywords. Knowing what keywords to look for in the text will help you gain that understanding of what it is you should be looking for. The next bullet point that you should do before skimming is understand what the text is about. So, we kind of talked about this already a little bit, but before you begin reading your text or your book or article or whatever it is, you want to know what the text you're about to read is about. And an easy way to do this is to read the abstract or the introduction of the text and then ask yourself, what is this text about? You're not going to know everything that the text is going to say just from reading the abstract or the introduction. You are going to have to read the full text. But before going in and diving deep into the reading, asking yourself the question, what is this text about, will help you not go into reading the text blindly. And overall, just by knowing what the text is about and what you're looking for will make your reading experience better and not as stressful. So now that you know what you should be looking for and you have a general overview of what you will be reading, now you can begin skimming. And we've already kind of talked about how we connect keywords and skimming together, but let's just kind of get a brief summary of really how you connect keywords and skimming together. And it's really quite simple. It's just that while you're reading your text, you want to look for those keywords. And remember, those keywords are like either in the question or the assignment. So now that you're reading your text and you're looking for those keywords, what do you do when you find a keyword in your text? That brings us now to our last point, which is annotating. The definition of annotating is adding notes to a text or diagram to provide an explanation or comment. So you've probably seen this before, but really it's just when you have a book or a text and you either like add post-its or sticky notes, or you write directly in the book or on the paper, just any thoughts you have about that section, or it could be highlighting, underlining, anything like that, that's called annotating. Before we dive a little deeper into the steps of doing it, here are a couple of visual examples of annotating. So again, we have highlighting, underlining, writing. And keep in mind too that annotating looks different on paper versus digitally, but you can annotate in both places. If you're writing on paper or like in a physical book, you can most likely do a bit more annotating than you could in a digital format, but in a digital format, you can still highlight and add notes to it. You can even change the color of the highlighted portion to fit within a category, whatever it is that you need. So this just kind of gives you a visual example of what annotating looks like and really just what your text should look like when you're reading it. You can look in this little graph where it has like yellow, blue, purple, and then blue pen, underlined word, anything like that, where they've kind of written out what each color or mark implies. And something to keep in mind here too is that the parts that are highlighted or have notes next to them, those aren't just keywords. Those are really just any points or notes that the reader wanted to mark in order to remember later. So now that we've kind of looked at some examples, let's go back to this slide and let's talk about the steps of annotating. Now, really, this process is a bit repetitive, but it's also important. So, the first step in annotating is, again, remember what you are looking for while reading, or remember those keywords or the question or what the assignment is asking you for. And then once you find something relevant to what you are looking for, or you find your keyword, you want to highlight it and add notes. So, again, just like we saw in those examples, you saw highlights, you saw notes written next to it. So, again, once you find something that's relevant to what you're looking for, highlight it and add notes. In addition to highlighting it and adding notes, you also want to explain your reasoning for highlighting it. And you can ask yourself questions to help you better understand its significance to you. Some examples of questions are, what does this mean to me? Why is it important? Does it answer the question I'm trying to answer? By